Welcome to Brand Your Dream Show, my friends. And today we're talking about business scaling with Mark Jarvis. He's business mentor with a lot of experience and interesting stories for you. Hi, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Eve. Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Please tell us a little bit more about your background, what you do, what is your experience, so that people can refer how they can learn from you today.
Thank you, Eve. I started my first business nearly 30 years ago now, like many people, without much of an idea how to run a business. You've got a great idea and all sorts of things that you do. It's a common story that many of us have
Mhm.
experienced. But I reflect on those learnings that I experienced in those years of growth and scaling my own businesses. It's my pleasure to share some of those ideas with you today.
hmm Amazing. I'm absolutely excited to hear that from you because you told us that you have many different systems. And I personally love to talk with people who have systems, like very organized approach to all the ideas which they have. So you told me that in regards of visibility, you have a system which actually come up with experience. So you learn something, you systemize it, and visibility for you is not just a word, not a random word which people love to use. Tell us more about what visibility is for business, especially when we talk about scaling, but probably from the beginning of business, how visibility matter.
Sure, yeah. You know, as I've mentioned already, I started my first business 30 years ago. And like a lot of people, I believed that showing up a lot was a good way to build my business, to grow my business, to scale my business. And I thought the more I turned up, the more visible I was, the better things would get. My business would be able to grow, I'd become more profitable, be able to scale my business, etc., etc. What I learned was that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned already, Eve, sometimes it's really useful to be able to systemize some of these things that we do. And which is one of the things that I've done. I've sort of reflected on my own experiences. In this case, I thought showing up a lot was a great way to increase my visibility and therefore grow and scale my business. I learned actually that it didn't work that way. It reached a certain point,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't go any further. And I wondered, well, why isn't it going any further? Why am I not being able to do the things that I thought I was going to be able to do just because I could turn up? And I thought, well, if I turn up some more, maybe it's going to get better. And I kept trying to turn up more and more and more. But you know what? It just didn't get better.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought to myself, well, actually, what is the secret to this? What do I need to change to move into a model which actually takes us beyond visibility?
That's really interesting because I think you get into the point where many visibility coaches teaching a lot. Like even I was like listening Grant Cardone recently, and he was like, money follow attention and things like this. You must be visible. He's in a way right. I can agree with that, but not every single person can show up in a level like Coca-Cola does, like with $1 million budgets and things like this. And I think in your answer, you just gave a few people a big hope that they can rather show up smartly. So please elaborate on it.
Absolutely, Eve. Let's think about what the purpose of a business is. Well, the purpose of a business is to be profitable.
Yeah.
And I have little quotes and sayings that I use a lot with my clients. But, for me, the purpose of a business is to be profitable, to have a meaningful vision and be profitable in achieving it. That's one of my little lines I use.
hmm
But the purpose of the business is to grow and scale and be profitable. But just showing up doesn't move you towards that. And that was my key learning for me. Just doing more and more visibility activities
hmm
didn't actually fulfill the purpose of my business, which was to grow and scale. But what does make a difference is moving into a credible relationships in your business. And only when you've built credible relationships in your business can you then turn those into profitable relationships in your business, which is the purpose of the business.
Right.
So, yes, it starts with visibility. Absolutely. Of course, it starts with visibility. But our next step is building credibility in our network, in our relationships, our clients, our customers, our suppliers, all of the people that we surround ourselves with commercially, professionally, and personally as well. But when we are consistently visible, we then become credible over time.
Mm-hmm.
When we are consistently credible over time, we become profitable in our business.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of my key learnings, is to consistently be visible, but consistency, not quantity, not the quantity aspect of visibility, but
Mm-hmm.
the quality aspect of visibility, and then consistently be visible to become credible, consistently be credible to become profitable in the business.
I really love this description or explanation. I remember I was learning from one of the business coaches, and they had a lot of exercises when they ask you to create the list of the activities which you do during the day. And one of these activities was profitability activities. So, what kind of activities you do during the day to make your business profitable? And it lies very well with your system because there are different activities, and many people consider that if they will show up 20 times like with reels or something like this, that's profitability. Oh, that's like something what they do for business. And many times we actually lie to ourselves by replacing quantity, like quality with quantity, which I love what you say, that first it is visibility which leads to relationship building, and that consistent relationship building and visibility leads to profitability. It's brilliant. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for this systematic approach, because I think for many people it become way more clear what they actually have to do. So you also say that authenticity is very important component for this relationship building process. And like in modern world of social media, people when they speak about authenticity, they say like, okay, I will have no makeup, I will be dressed like, I just woke up and things like this. That authenticity. And I usually say you just come for the call unprepared. That's not authenticity. You just underprepared. That's it. So that idea was so contagious that it's pretty much stop all the vlogging, because with vlogs people just show up as whatever, they just woke up, they vlog themselves, and they're influencers on YouTube for some reasons after that. However, the study shows that when these, so to say, influencers started selling something, and primitive things like t-shirts, because they had so much love, millions of followers and things like this type of influencers, in fact, were struggling to sell a simple t-shirt for 15 bucks. So visibility, or this unprepared open authenticity, not always lead to success in business, and absolutely probably never lead to sales or something. I don't want to say never, but it's really not connected. So what is your take on authenticity and how it's supposed to be in business?
Sure. Thank you, Eve. If I may perhaps create a segue which links the comment about our first topic into authenticity as well. And I talked about being consistently visible to become credible, being consistently credible to become profitable. So what does that consistency mean? Well, at its very basic, and because of the time we have today, Eve, I will just leave you with this to say, do what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it.
Mhm,
And I know that that sounds obvious for people. However, it's the one thing, or one of the key things, that so many people fall down on,
mhm,
because there's a level of expectation that we have with each other. So
mhm,
you have expectations of me today. I have expectations of you today. But I may not have talked to you about those expectations.
mhm,
Okay. So when I understand what your expectations are, it's easy for me to meet them.
mhm,
But if you've never shared those expectations with me, and it's often related to values,
mhm.
if you haven't shared those expectations with me, I can only guess what they are.
Right.
So if I've promised you something and I don't deliver it, then you think less of me. So that credibility reduces. which links into the trust and authenticity thing we're going to mention here in a moment. But the tip I could offer really is to always do what you say you're going to do and meet your expectations of others, even if you don't quite know what they might be,
Mm-hmm.
because that's one of the things that damages credibility. So you'll always be sitting in that trying to do more visibility stuff. Again, this is what I did. And
Mm-hmm.
this is why I'm so keen to share this idea with other people so that they can really grasp this, so they can really truly grow and scale the business.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because it tap into brand promise and in values, and that's pretty much what make us relatable to other people. And I always say, like, when you build your personal brand, it's always about walk your talk. So whatever you promise, you really need to be or embody your values, your ideas, or otherwise it's just like words.
Yes, and it again a contentious point. Just to finish off on that before we move on. Um, this is what happens a lot in businesses. We get busy in business, so
Yeah.
sometimes we need to cancel or postpone meetings in business. It's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you. I'm sure it's happened to our listeners today.
It
We need
happened to
to
both
cancel.
of us at our first meeting, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to cancel meetings because life happens and things happen. However, we need to consider what the other person's perspective is, what
Mm,
their thought process is about us having cancelled that meeting.
mm,
Because what we're actually saying is what you think you're doing is more important than what I thought we were doing.
mm.
So can you see how potentially that can damage credibility over time?
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying be very careful of cancelling and postponing meetings apart from when life happens and family and health, of course, always number one.
Hmm.
But when something happens, remember that you've made an appointment.
Hmm.
If you don't sort of follow up on that appointment, you need to cancel it or postpone it or something happens. What is the other person's perspective, or what do they think of? What do they think is happening? Perhaps they're thinking, well, what you think you're doing is more important than what I thought we were doing. So that's a credibility blockage that happens in a lot of situations. And I learned the hard way. It's what I used to do. I thought, well, that's okay. Can we meet next week? That's okay. We can do that. Let's arrange a one-to-one or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I think in time in business, I learned that probably from that what people did to me, but I cannot say that I'm an angel and I never did any mistakes. But thing is that valuing other people time sometimes more important than anything because time is not replaceable, right? So it's the most valuable currency of all. And thinking about this, in the previous interview, we were talking about customer experience and we were talking about how businesses can show to people that they actually care. So I think it's merging very well with this idea that we always, one way or another, need to show that we really care about people. Whether if we postpone the meeting, we just need to give a proper explanation. Sometimes we're all human beings. Sometimes things happen, right? But if we explain it with the decent explanation, really something happened in family or something like this, I had a few times the explanation from other people who had to have one to one with me, and they would be like, "Oh, I have headache today. Can we postpone it?" And obviously, they not really postponing it yet, but they giving you a very interesting choice. They say, "I don't feel right. I can talk to you, but I will hate you," something like that. And I will be extremely unhappy. So, like, be prepared. They pretty much giving me no choice by saying, like, "Oh, no problem. It's all right. Everything is okay." So, what I learned from this, I never rescheduling these meetings. So I say, "No problem. You know my number. You have my connection, whatever time is comfortable for you." And I never follow back after that. That's my choice. And the reason is I gave them this time. Usually, obviously, we book specific timing with people and we reject other people who could be at the same times, but so this time is valuable for business. But on the other hand, if I plan 10 meetings in a day, I know that this specific day I will not go out for other meetings, you know. So it's also involve a lot of different types of activities. So I think what you described, the responsibility for the choices which we make and seeing it from the customer perspective, actually create a lot of business ethic for business overall, business values, how our brand show up for customers overall. And then eventually it create customers testimonials, because brand ambassadors who we build with this kind of experience, they're most genuine people. They're like, oh my God, I love to work with that business. Just you all need to work with them. And it's free advertising. It's the best advertising. It's word of the mouth, right?
Correct, absolutely, even, and which again speaks to the point that we're just talking about here, because that links very closely to trust and the authenticity behind trust as well.
Mm-hmm. So, what was your take? You said that you started building from trust, but then you realized that it's more about authenticity. Tell us more about that.
Correct. So again, let's go back to the early days of my business experience, my startup business, I guess, if you call it that, Um, and what do? We learn from other people. We read a book, you read a book on sales and you read a book on marketing and you read stuff, you go on
Mm-hmm.
courses and whatever else. And they say to get business, you need to build trust with your prospects.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, well, you need to touch base with them. You need 7 touch points or 12 touch points or whatever the latest one
Yeah.
is. 7 touch points that of building trust over time with your prospects in order to turn them into customers, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is, unless authenticity underlines that, that's never going to work,
Yeah.
because trust in our increasingly cynical society, commercially and personally, um, in our increasingly cynical society, we're becoming immune to that, people trying to build trust with us artificially over time, because we sense it.
Yeah.
We're human beings. We sense when somebody is being inauthentic, and we use the word inauthentic a
Mm-hmm.
lot more than we use authentic and trust, which is interesting.
Yeah.
So again, I used to spend time building trust over time and touching base with my prospects to turn them into clients and blah 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 blah, and it worked. Okay, it worked. But the reality is, when you discover your authenticity and you're really true to that authenticity, then it becomes easy,
Mm-hmm.
because all the other times it's hard work. It's hard work trying to create a sales funnel which is filled with trust touch points and all the other stuff that we do. And we turn up, we turn up lots of times in terms of visibility to try and build trust with our people, and credibility leads to trust. Well, actually not, if you're inauthentic, and etc etc. So these two things are very, very closely linked.
Mm-hmm.
And I always talk about authenticity as, there's a lovely quote, isn't there? I think it's a Henry Ford quote. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Henry Ford, but I'm sure one of our listeners probably will know better. But apologies, whoever it was. And it's a lovely quote, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
often we shout about how good we think we are in our marketing and our sales and our brand and all sorts of other things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if our prospects, if our customers feel that that is inauthentic, then our opportunity for growth and scaling our business becomes it becomes a challenge, it becomes hard work.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's not about who we are. Um, it's about what we are when nobody is looking.
Mm-hmm.
That for me is the key to authenticity. Not about who we are and what I've done and my accolades and awards and certificates and all the other stuff. It's not about that. It's about what I am and who I am when nobody is looking.
Yeah, and how comfortable you feel in your shoes when you start talking with people from that perspective, I guess. Because many times I think there is a conflicting idea in a market, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I started my evacuation from Ukraine, and many of our viewers already know that I evacuated from Ukraine because of the war, I was focusing on a very different type of message. I knew that I have to reevaluate my message because I was evolving as a person. The new experience definitely created different perspective, different paradigms. But when I get back to business, so I was like strong enough to start showing up and do all the things, the strongest paradigm of the market still hit the point, like, everybody's still looking for six figures business, drugs and riches, all this kind of popular ideas which you need to share as your story, or otherwise nobody will ever listen to you. And I feel that I still struggling with this part, so how being fully yourself and how to show up from the perspective of yourself and still see your own value in your message, while the overall market message is shiny objects and all the things which look attractive at the first glance, but however, they really have very low value if we will look deeper into the subject. So what do you feel about this, like this authenticity? This is some form of struggle for many business owners, so it just crazy me.
It is absolutely you, because again, we come from this point of traditionally being taught that we're trying to build trust in our networks and our customers and suppliers. But the reality is, when we are comfortable with our purpose, which we'll come to in a bit as well, when we're comfortable with our purpose and people really understand why we care about what we do. Remember the quote I just shared? I don't care about what you do. I don't care how much you know. I don't care how clever you think you are.
Mhm.
If I don't think you care, if I don't believe that you care, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
And that's authenticity. And that's why I think, when people can really be clear on why they care about what they do. And for me, I learned through some of the experience I've shared briefly today already, some of the things that I tried because I thought that's what we needed to do.
Hmm.
Now I've learned actually there's a better way. There's things that we can do which can just make things so much easier, much simpler. And that's why I care so much about sharing it with people, because I did it. I did it the hard way. And now I'm
Hmm.
trying to show people how to do it the easy way, or simpler way. It's not easy, but it's a simple way. So, you know, tapping into the purpose that we have really drives our authenticity when we can demonstrate why we care so much about what we do.
Hmm.
Now, I think we can agree that there's lots of businesses we could probably cite, and of course, I'm not going to do it here today. There's lots of businesses that we can think of who are very, very good at sales and marketing and doing all those sorts of things. But when you drill down, the
Hmm.
people in the organization don't understand why they're doing the things they're doing.
Yeah.
And therein lies that inauthenticity, and it particularly endemic in larger organizations, sadly. But we won't get into that today.
And I can give you an example from my own experience. We were doing the evaluation for one big company. They wanted to purchase the big known brand, and this was a old restaurant. And the name is the name was famous and is famous, I guess. And it was a serious deal financially. And they were invited us as brand experts, but they asked us to understand if this brand actually that valuable. And when we did our research, we didn't recommend to buy it. And that was really weird suggestion probably for them. But the thing is that brand was known, but in the moment they turned into franchisee and basically scaled the business, they were not caring, not authentic anymore. Because when it was a small restaurant in Old Delhi, it was different story. When it was small French, many small restaurants all across the country who had different recipes, different customer service. In fact, the customer service didn't exist. They didn't address any negative feedback online, so that's why we didn't recommend it, because there were millions really negative nasty comments on the bad food, on bad hygiene, all the things, and none of this was addressed for years. So the negative impact of these doing business habits basically caused them to the fact that we didn't recommend to buy this business because it didn't make sense. You basically buy more trouble than profit in this situation. So profitability was in a big question. And I believe that the company who asked us to evaluate this offer, they quite probably dive deeper into financial aspects, because I don't believe that when I see the situation of brand treatment, when brand doesn't care about their customers, that it doesn't affect the financial aspect of the business. I firmly believe that it's 100% affect the
Mm.
financial part. So I didn't know about this. I didn't have access to this, but I can connect the dots. So based on this, I want to talk with you more about the business scaling, because business scaling is an interesting animal. Overall, when we talk about business growing, right? So get more customers, start from the beginning, this is one story. Many people can grow the business one way or another, and then they plateau in on certain level because the system didn't involve any instruments or foundation for actual scaling. And as I told you, with this franchisee idea, for example, it was rather a bad idea of scaling. The other different method had to be involved initially, and I saw that they were not involved. So thinking about the healthy and good way to scale business, what have to be involved? What are your best suggestions? Tell us more about this.
Sure, yes. So I have a scaling formula which I use with clients really, and it's about 4 Ps. It's people, processes, products, and profitability. The
Mhm,
4 Ps of scaling, if you like, and you can include purpose in there and lots of other Ps if you want to, but those are the key things. And it always starts with people, which is, it touches a lot on what we've already talked about today in our call. It
mhm,
talks about authenticity. It talks about visibility and credibility and how you turn that into something which makes a business profitable. So, that this concept of scaling a business is for me is not the same as growing a business. It's not the same as expanding a business. There are some other recordings where I talk a lot about the difference between growth and scaling, and you can find those on my website.
mhm,
But here we're talking about scaling a business. And for me, the easiest way to think about scaling a business is you can scale a business without making it bigger.
mhm,
Now, that might sound a little bit, um, uh, a little bit strange for people,
mhm,
but a lot of people want to be, they don't want to have a big business. They maybe just want to be a sole trader or a small business, maybe 2 or 3 people, maybe 10 or 20, whatever it is. Not everybody wants to have a massive size of business, but you
mhm,
can still scale that business. Okay. And herein lies the difference. So, scaling a business is about developing people, and that starts with you, the
mhm,
business owner, the founder, the director, the leaders, the team, whoever it might be. It starts with people. So, you grow people. You can't grow a business, you scale a business, but you grow people.
mhm,
So, you grow people. You develop and refine your processes in the system, you in the business. You make them more efficient. You increase productivity and all sorts of things like that. So you focus on your processes second. Then you're focusing on your products and your services. You're developing new products. You're opening new markets. You're innovating in your marketplace. You're inventing things, all sorts of things like that. So you're focusing on your products. And only then will profitability come. And profitability is almost a consequence of how you invest and grow your people, how you develop and refine your processes, and how you innovate in your products and services and open new markets. Profitability then becomes a consequence rather than a focus. And that for me is the true essence of scaling, because you can expand a business and just make it bigger, but all you do
mhm.
is just get busy. But you can't grow a business, you grow people, and people scale businesses.
That's very interesting, because this is a probably first time when I hear the difference between expansion and scaling, which I guess many people would consider the same thing. And I'm super grateful that you explained the difference, because it's definitely a huge difference. And why I say it, like, the instruments which people need to have is an ability to delegate, and as you say, people, ability to trust that your team can pick up the process. You train people well enough that business can work without you. All these kind of elements is really, really interesting. So what do you think is the most important component to start with for the business when they looking for scaling and they are not yet in the stage where they can scale, but like right from the beginning, what has to be implemented when they, for example, in the process of building. So they have a product, they have an idea, they have somewhat team, and they are in the process of scaling. They probably will be there like in a year or something. So what do they need to consider before it?
I think, as we've said already today, time is the one thing we cannot get any more of. We
Mm-hmm.
can't make more time. We can make more money. We can make less money, but you can't make more time.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps one of the closing tips that I wanted to share with people today was one of my, again, I like a system only because my own experience has drawn me to create these systems for myself, such
Mm-hmm.
that I can share them with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it my 60-20-20 rule. And we'll get into it in a moment, particularly. But the answer to your question directly, Eve, is that unless you're investing in yourself and your own personal development, you are never going to be able to move outside of what you already know.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lovely quote again: you will never out earn your learning.
Yeah.
I don't know who said that. It wasn't me. Somebody did say that.
I
But
don't even risk to quote people,
no,
honestly.
it's okay. But I must think probably there's probably a lot of quotes I do have, but for me, people come first, and unless we're investing in ourselves first, we're
Mm-hmm.
never going to be in a position where we can scale our business. We
Right.
can expand and get busy. That's easy. We
Mm-hmm.
can fill our diary with customers and clients and meetings and all sorts of other things that make us busy. Easy to do that. That's the expansion model. Again, we don't have time to sort of investigate that particularly today,
Mm-hmm.
but it has to start with us. So, for example, my 60-20-20 rule says, okay, 60% of your time you work in the business delivering the product or service.
Mm-hmm.
20% of your time you spend working on the business,
Mm-hmm.
and 20% of your time you spend working on yourself. And if you don't find a balance there, you're only ever going to be busy and expand your business. And that's okay, it'll be bigger. Your turnover will increase, but my fourth P, my profitability KPI, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
will not increase significantly. So turnover increases, costs increase, but profitability only increases marginally. And
Mm-hmm.
that's unfortunately where many of our larger organizations and corporations exist. They exist in a very high turnover world, turning over millions and billions of pounds, but their profitability is minimal, which is why we see so many going into administration and going bust.
Wow.
Because they've expanded their business, they haven't scaled it.
And I just want you to elaborate on this part because we had this conversation before, not in this interview. But you said we were talking about buying and selling businesses, and I was looking for this subject quite a while. And it's an interesting market because, in terms of investment, this is way more interesting investment than any property, any other kind of things, because it can give you return on investment very quickly if you know to which business to invest. So you said that profitability of the business is one of the most important components to consider when we buy in the business. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Of course I will, Eve. Absolutely. Yeah. So as well as being a business mentor, I'm a business investor and non-exec director and various other bits and pieces that I do as well. So, if I'm looking to review a business, yes, I'm going to look at their turnover, their bottom line, their spreadsheets, their accounting packages, and all the other bits and pieces. I'm going to look at their bottom line. And I might see the turnover of the business increasing 10 or 20% per annum, for example, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
However, if I'm looking at their profitability percentage, then if that's not increasing, not significantly, but if it's not increasing over a period of years and months and years, then the alarm bells start to ring, because
Mm-hmm.
all I've got is a business that's getting busier and bigger, but it's not more profitable.
Yeah.
So if it's not profitable, my return on investment as a potential buyer of a business is not increasing. My
Hmm.
return on investment is not increasing.
Hmm.
Okay, because the percentage, the profitability percentage is not increasing. And coming back to the point I made just a moment ago, can you see how a small business, a micro business, can be very profitable?
Yeah,
And a large business with a huge turnover might not be very profitable. And
absolutely.
that's one of the reasons why I say scaling businesses don't have to be bigger.
Hmm.
Yeah. Controversially, you don't have to have a big business to scale it. You can be a sole trader,
Yeah.
a solo business owner, and still scale your business. And scaling is my 4 Ps: people, products, profitability, processes.
Hmm.
So I hope that answers the question, Eve.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, it's such a wide topic, and I'm like turning different questions in my head, and I'm like, okay, if I will ask this question, we will speak another 3 hours. You know? So, because there is a lot of different levels in business, I think, with our viewers, and many people will ask questions like, wait a minute, how you calculate profitability? How can you increase it? I mean, tons of questions, but it's all great because I think this way people can think of connecting with you. And that exactly when they can get answers to all these questions. And I know that you share a lot of really useful content in your blog. I know that you mentor people. So, how people can connect with you?
Thank you, Eve. Yes, I think probably the easiest way to do it, you can find my website and Eve will very kindly put the link in there, but
Yeah.
you can Google Mark Jarvis Academy.
Hmm.
Just Google the Mark Jarvis Academy. You will find me there, all of my links and all the other bits and pieces. And of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just put Mark Jarvis in LinkedIn, you'll find me there. And I'm very happy to have conversations with people. There's a sort of book a free 30-minute call with me just to bounce some ideas around. And
Hmm.
I'm very happy to do that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for this interview. I will put all the links in the description somewhere on the screen and description to the video and description of podcast so people never miss you and they definitely will connect to you after hearing this very interesting conversation.
Thank you, Eve. It's been an absolute pleasure. Yes, I can see how, had we gone into some more detail, we probably would have been talking another 3 hours. But perhaps there's an opportunity to get in some detail in
Yeah,
another episode.
perhaps in some other interview because it can be a series easily. Thank you so much.
Pleasure to be here, Eve. Thank you.